In this Columbia automatic taper repair video, I will be teaching you how to put your taper back together. Here is a list of the tools you will need. I'll start by washing the tube that was soaking. I use a toilet brush to wash the inside of the tube and a scrub brush to wash the outside. Once your tube is clean, it is time to put your taper head on. Line the 5 holes up together and press it in place. It is a press fit, so you must hammer it in place using a punch. Next, you will fasten the screws that hold the head on in place. Now it's time to put your second seal onto your backing plate. Using silicone, run a line around the backing plate. Then, using your finger, form it into place, disposing of the excess. When you are finished working it into place, the silicone should look nicely seated. Close your mud gate onto the silicone so that it can make an indent where it sits when closed. When putting your valve into place, you will need to line the hole in the valve up with the hole in the taper head. But first, put a bead of silicone around it so that it doesn't leak between it and the head. Once it is fastened, clean the excess silicone off. Next, connect the trigger cable and trigger strap together using the screw and lock washer. Tighten them until they are tight and then back it off a half turn so that there is freedom to pivot. Before putting your clutch system back together, it is a good idea to clean your clutch of any dry mud and check its spring tension. Remove the clutch spring using a flathead screwdriver. If you feel your clutch spring needs more tension, you can put more in it by bending it outwards. Using a flathead screwdriver and a dental pick, clean out any dry mud that you see. The clutch dog should move up and down freely. Once it does, put the clutch spring back in place. Before putting the clutch system in place, install your head bushings. One on the right side of the taper, one on the left side, and one in the sprocket. Then you put the wafer washer over the back of the sprocket, add a little grease to it to make it run smooth, and then insert it into the taper head. Next, insert your cable drum. Columbia Taping Tools makes the best cable drum on the market. Not only is it made of stainless steel so that it will last forever, it also has release holes in it so that your clutch will never get seized inside due to dry mud. Put some grease onto the head and inside of it, then apply the wafer washer and put it into the taper head. The next step is to insert the clutch. Once it is inside, you will need to line the flat spot on the clutch rod up with the fastening hole on the cable drum. Push the clutch all the way in, and then using a 15th thou shim to separate the sprocket from the head, line the cable drum hole and the flat spot on the clutch rod up, and then fasten them together while pinching the cable drum and clutch together. And then once it is tight, remove the shim. Next, apply the cable pulley. Grease the inside of it first. Put the cable pulley onto the head bushing, and then put the cable into the cable pulley slot. Then, fill the clutch rod with grease prior to inserting the clutch pin. Insert the clutch pin, and then test the sprocket to see if it rides smoothly. To replace the cable and plunger cup on your plunger, using pliers, remove both the hex nut that holds the cable in place and the castle nut that holds the plunger in place. Before putting the new plunger on, I like to flare it out to get a better seal. Simply flip it upside down, place it on the table, and hammer it a few times. This can also be effective on older plungers that leak. Fasten the castle nut back onto the brass screw and line it up slot to slot. Then take the cable through the hex nut and insert it into the slot and tighten the hex nut down. The plunger is now ready to go back into the tube. Flare it out and then cable first, drop it in. Once you have it in, insert your bottom ring and bottom ring screws, unless you have the new style bottom ring with O-rings that does not need screws, shown here. Flip the taper right side up, and then using needle nose pliers, pull your cable past the cable drum. Then take the ball of the cable and insert it into the hole and cable slot on the cable drum. This is a press fit, so you might need to tap it in place using a screwdriver. When it is seated, fasten the cable holding screw in its place. To advance the cable, insert a long skinny rod into the tube to add weight to the plunger, and then turn the clutch forward and bring the cable up. Next, you will put the gear chain and sprocket back on. Take the chain and lay it over the large sprocket. Then insert the small sprocket into the chain. Once you've done this, bring the small sprocket up to the top wheel rod and thread it on. To tighten the small sprocket down, you will need to clamp the pliers over it and the chain, and then roll the top wheel forwards. Give the top wheel a spin to make sure it is set up correctly. Next, apply the chain guard over the cutter wheel screw and fasten the lock nut over top of it using an 11/32 nut driver. Then bend the chain guard out with pliers so that the chain can run freely. Before putting the cap back on, it is a good idea to get its push rod running smoothly. To do this, you need to remove the clutch cam using pliers and a flathead screwdriver, followed by the push rod using pliers and a 5/16 nut driver. Grease the push rod and then insert it back into the cap, making sure that its hole is clean. It should ride freely up and down. Then fasten the lock nut back onto it using the pliers and 5/16 nut driver. Before applying the cap, grease the mudgate where it rides on the cap. Then put the cam fastening screw through the cam holder and place the cap back onto the head. Next, put the top cap screws back into their slots and then tighten the cap screws down. Now that your cap is tight, you can put your cam back on. When your cam is tightened down, it should move freely. And when your taper is in neutral, your clutch dog should look like this. Thank you for watching this video on the Columbia automatic taper. I hope you found it useful. To complete your taper tune-up, you will need to watch the Columbia automatic taper repair video number 4. For more videos like this, please visit the Columbia Taping Tools Facebook page.